Welcome, welcome, everybody. So, thank you for joining us on this holiday week for our webinar series, Igniting Engagement Strategies for Motivating Employees. And we're actually starting off on week 3 because we skipped it last week due to an emergency. So, we appreciate you guys coming along for the journey with us. So, we'll get started right at 12. Again, excited to be here, super grateful to be able to share some time and space with you guys during such a special week that definitely lends to motivation for our employees, particularly during the holiday season. So we'll talk a little bit about how to get specific today, how to really design goals to create momentum, but also to set us up as managers for a much easier, much more enjoyable type of experience when we're performance managing. Okay. All right. So we're right at the top of the hour. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So, hi, if you haven't met me before, I'm Dr. Myra Austin. I'm the CEO and founder of a company called Management Cues, and we specialize in providing management training that's scientifically proven to work. We partner with companies like Neuron, who is our neuroscience partner, to understand what experiences our managers are going through as they're learning, as they're training, and as they're managing. So we are definitely unique in that way. And one of a kind, I think, in this moment in time in the corporate training space. Our company specializes in designing tools, creating training programs that are fully immersive and really focus on experiences that champion growth and that champion the creation and the opportunity of workforce equity to give managers an opportunity to not only grow professionally, but to find their voice, to feel seen, to feel heard, and to really change the type of impact that they bring to the table. So that is something that we are thoroughly passionate about. So today we're going to focus on a quick bite-sized look into setting goals and aligning them individually and organizationally in the workplace. Something that I've commonly seen with managers is an overemphasis on the SMART framework, for example, where we're focusing too much on the quantitative aspects of goal setting, goal design, and the experiences that our employees have. And the other thing that I've seen is having a million different tools in the workplace that speak to goals that are meant to support goals or support performance management, but that aren't necessarily aligned, aren't simple enough to be clearly understood, or there hasn't been enough training around to make those tools effective for you. So those are some of the things we'll touch on and what to look out for as a manager who really wants to be a master at goal setting. Okay, here we go. So goal setting is essential to motivation. So our entire series for this webinar has been focusing on different ways of looking at motivation in the workplace from a management perspective. And so managers must understand goal design to effectively motivate employees and influence the outcomes. So again, if there's no emphasis on how we're designing the goals, what logic we're using, is there a balance between quantitative and qualitative aspects, we're missing out. We're leaving talent on the table. We're leaving opportunity on the table. And so these are things for us to look out for. Effective goal setting requires clarity, communication, and adaptive strategies based on feedback. And so tools and models like the SMART framework gets us a portion of the way there. And so goals must be clear and easy to understand for the manager and the employee. Another way to look at it is we have to understand the story behind the goal, the meaning of the goal, and how that actually connects to a higher purpose within an organization. And so those are some of the steps that are commonly missed in the workforce that lend to a lack of productivity, lack of output, or overall a miss between our expectations of performance and what's actually happening in the workplace. So, the role of managers in goal setting. So, a very important aspect to me of creating impact and getting managers excited about their role and what they're able to do is understanding our goal within the role that we have and really how that lends to making a difference. So, managers must understand the company vision and mission before they actually start looking at how to set goals. They need to clarify expectations for the team, prioritize goals and work duties. So things have to be in balance, right? If we're setting goals, but there's a resource allocation problem, that goal is ultimately only going to create stress and pressure, and it won't be met because it's just unrealistic. You want to use data and workplace realities, which is why you need to rely on feedback to make decisions or adjustments around goals. You, of course, want to set a timeline and make sure things are time bound. But in order to do that, it's not just setting a due date, it's also outlining what a milestone looks like, when check ins are going to happen, and what progress tool you're using or method to get a feel for whether things are moving forward, whether they're at a standstill, or whether there's something holding people back. You want to create a space for learning from failures. Mistakes happen, and in the process of achieving goals, there could be setbacks. There could be, shortage of resources. There could be new compliance measures. There's so many things that happen in the workplace that really stop us from achieving goals. And so the awareness around that has to start with management because we're guiding day-to-day interactions and productivity. There has to be balance between ambition and attainability, right? So it's okay to be excited. It's okay to have a big vision, to have an enthusiasm around goals that we're setting, but they also have to be achievable because otherwise we're actually having a counterproductive impact in the workplace and setting people up to fail. You want to provide resources and support. And so for each goal, an effective manager should go through and look at whether they have the resources in line to support these initiatives and really do a checks and balances before we even release the goal. You want to monitor the progress, provide feedback, and adjust those goals. You want to advocate for your team. If a goal is coming down from a higher level organizational goal, but it's unrealistic, you need to advocate for your team and explain why the rationale is lacking components or facts that could support redirecting or redefining the larger organizational goal. And then you want to maintain transparency. When we're goal setting, if we're not clear and it's not easy to understand, people are just going to put in effort without direction. And I've seen that happen several times. And so I will often tell my managers, I've seen people work really hard moving in the wrong direction, right? Working really hard, going left when they're supposed to be going right. And sometimes that happens because of the absence of transparency. So identify the purpose of the goal. What business objective will it help achieve? So this is incredibly important. As managers, explaining why and giving purpose to the day-to-day interactions that are taking place help people feel like they're part of something bigger, like there's a reason for what they're doing. There's a reason for doing it well. So for that reason, this question is really important for us to be clear on as well. So as managers, we have to be clear on why that goal makes sense, why it's relevant, and what it's actually going to help improve or achieve. Creating a purposeful goal. So that leads us to identifying what actually creates a purposeful goal. So a purposeful goal links the goal to a higher purpose. It aligns goals with the mission and values of the company. So it's all connected. When goals connect to the broader vision, managers are more likely to feel motivated and committed as well. So, this helps you kind of see the big picture and have it all make sense in such a way that you can explain it to others in a very clear and easy way. Goals should stretch managers beyond their comfort zones without being unattainable. So, a degree of challenge is normal when you're managing against goals. And even when you're setting goals for yourself, that's the component of growth. So, while they should be challenging to a degree, they shouldn't be unreasonable or unattainable, right? That's different. So the right level of requirement of challenge that actually motivates us as people. So it can fuel a higher sense of accomplishment because you're earning what you're accomplishing and it's an achievement, right? It has more meaning to it. When we're aligning goals with vision and mission in a company, we're looking at moving together in the same direction. And that's why it's so important. I've seen organizations in which I go in, I check out what they're talking about, I take a look at their projects. And one of the first questions that I ask is, how do you define success for your role or for what you're doing? And sometimes it's challenging for the teams to define that. And the reason is because some of what they're doing isn't clearly linked to maybe the vision of success, or the vision of success itself has never been defined for them clearly enough to where they can remember it. So you want to extract core themes from the vision and mission for your company. For example, if you have an emphasis on innovation or customer satisfaction or growth, your goals should to some degree speak to that, right? It should be in alignment with achieving those areas. You want to break down the long-term goals into specific objectives for each department. Each department should be moving essentially in the same direction. And so having these types of conversations or strategy sessions help you identify bottlenecks, disconnects, or things that are just a conflict of interest. So you want to divide departmental goals into team and individual objectives. You want to ensure that every person's effort is aligned with this larger picture, this vision of what success looks like for you. You want to focus on impact and not have an overemphasis on completing things, right? That kind of is what helps us have that bigger, wider lens of business. So you want to decide what specific impact you want the goal to have on the workforce, right? On the team. What exactly how would this help us? How would this make us better? How is this going to help us get more sales, right? It has to be clear. Confirm if the goal is intended for skill development, morale improvement, or productivity. So this is another component that I think isn't discussed as often as it should for sure. But it's confirming how this goal is going to help the individual succeed, how this goal is going to help the department succeed, how this goal is going to help the company succeed. And clearly creating those links and speaking to them in a very simple way really kind of has the impact of remaining in a person's memory because it's so simple to connect to, and it impacts ultimately their own sense of self-preservation. So analyzing current workforce data. So when we're looking at designing goals, it is really critical for us to have a realistic perspective of what's happening with our environment and what's happening with what people are experiencing. So you want to assess strengths and weaknesses, use performance data, employee surveys, and feedback, get a deeper understanding of how to create goals that are actually going to make an impact. Identify gaps. So look for gaps in skills, knowledge, or performance that need to be addressed. If some of these gaps are going to get in the way of achieving the goal, then the goal might not be very realistic. And it depends who we're talking about and how many people, right? Maybe it's just 1 out of 5 people this goal would actually not be attainable for. And as a manager, you need to know that. And that could be an indicator of they need additional training or development, or they're just not in the right role. And there's a decision that needs to be made because this person or team member is going to continuously fail as they try to achieve this unattainable goal due to an absence of skill or knowledge. So these are the types of things that managers have to be in tune with when we're looking at goal setting. And this happens before the goal even gets set and assigned, right? So this is before. That's why it's the design phase. Consider trends, consider current trends in the industry and workforce dynamics that might influence the goal's relevance and success. Is this lending to a competitive advantage? Is this lending to improvement? Is this lending to growth? Sometimes as an operator, I've gone into environments where there's a set of KPIs that have been used per department for decades. And nobody has gone back in to reevaluate if they're actually still relevant and still speak to competitiveness. And so the reason something like that can just be on autopilot for so long is because managers aren't advocating. They're not working on goal setting design, and they're just plugging and playing with what they've been given. And so there's an absence of innovation. But in that aspect, there's also an absence of relevance with where our effort, our labor, our costs, our investments are going. So it's a good opportunity if you've never worked on goal design to start thinking of it that way, because it'll enable you to have conversations in which you speak to leadership with real substance that is going to make a very big difference for the business. So we talked about the SMART framework. And like I said, it's the starting point. As a professor of the School of Business at the university level in higher education, I teach about the SMART framework in our organizational behavior courses. And what I point out is this is just the starting point. What really makes a difference with the SMART framework is the type of questions that we ask. And so this infographic is just one of my favorites. It's not designed by us, but I really love how clearly it's laid out and the amazing questions that are shared. So under specific, it has what exactly are you trying to achieve? Under measurable, how will you know when you've achieved it? Under attainable, is it genuinely possible to achieve it? Under relevant, does it contribute to your agency's revenue growth? And under time bound, when do you want to achieve this by? So it's not just putting in all the quantifiable parts of the information behind the goal. It's really asking the right question so that the goal is an optimal goal that is actually going to speak to impact and that everybody clearly understands and knows how to achieve it. So it's taking that deeper, more thoughtful, conscientious look at how we use goals to motivate people in the workforce. Because if they're used thoughtlessly, unintentionally, or just because it's the way we've done it for so long, it's actually going to be counterproductive and probably demotivating and probably create a huge amount of stress and anxiety. So breaking down large goals into milestones. So it's easy to have big, beautiful, exciting goals. The degree of mastery behind goal setting really comes into play as a manager when you can break it down into simple components that help people feel like they're moving through the process versus have this huge elephant that they have to eat one bite at a time, right? So you do this by dividing larger goals into smaller, manageable tasks or milestones. This makes progress visible and keeps motivation high. You acknowledge the completion of each milestone and give employees a sense of accomplishment and encourage them to keep moving forward. So the magical part of milestones is that it allows you to feel like you're accomplishing something as you're working towards the bigger goal. And that, like we've learned in our prior webinar series, gives you that boost of dopamine that makes you feel like something is happening. And so if we only focus on this large objective that seems hundreds of miles away from what we're doing or have time to do, we lose that momentum. So milestones are very critical in the goal setting process. Okay, so here we're looking at how do we cultivate that intrinsic motivation? How do we cultivate with goal setting that desire to do something, to achieve it, to complete it, that we so desperately need as managers, because our job is to motivate and get our teams to get through these things. So, autonomy. Autonomy gives employees an ability to make decisions about their goals. It empowers them to tap into that inner feeling of, I'm in control, I can do this, and here's what I can decide around it, right? It gives them that control. Mastery: set goals that encourage skill development and mastery, creating opportunities for employees to grow within their role. So goal setting is an opportunity to identify those gaps, but also to step into them. And if there's something that the team member doesn't know or has a skill for, maybe this goal is where they learn it, but the manager has to be aware and provide support to get them to that point. And then purpose. You want to highlight how the goal contributes to the bigger picture, fostering a sense of purpose, and also how it can help them gain a new skill, earn a promotion, however it's linked in your organization or however it can help. You want to connect those dots for people. You want to lead by example. So goal setting is a way of motivating people. It's a way of doing good work. It's a way of measuring that we're being effective. So there's all of these good aspects of why goal setting is effective in the workforce. But it always starts with you as a manager. So you want to be a role model and you want to demonstrate your commitment to goal setting. You want to share that you're clear, and you have to be able to connect these things for people, because if not, you can't manage or lead them through it and effectively. And that's the reality. You want to lead by the examples, right? You want to show them that you can complete and meet your goals. Because if everybody in the company cannot meet their goals or doesn't clearly understand their goals, it's always going to start with management and leadership not having a clear understanding of the goal, how it relates to the business, and how it's making an impact. You want to share your success stories. If you have team members or you yourself are meeting your goals, and you can show that success can happen and what winning looks like, you want to talk about that in a storytelling way. You want to say, I had this really tough goal. I wasn't sure I was going to make it. Here's how I went about making sure that I had all of my resources, that I asked all the right questions, and that I worked through any barriers that took place as I was trying to achieve that goal. So you want to make it real and tangible versus just numbers on a page. You want to encourage self-reflection. Goal setting has an impact according to neuroscience, right? It has an impact and motivation, but it can have an impact in other cognitive states as well, that could be detrimental. And so you want to encourage this kind of self-reflecting space. Self-assessing: encourage employees to talk about how they feel about the goal, evaluating their own strengths and weaknesses or areas of improvement during one-on-one meetings or feedback rounds, or any other way of engaging in feedback that you might have set up in your company. It could be maybe a Slack channel that's dedicated to challenges with goals. You want to reflect on past experiences. Both successes and failures are very, very valuable. And you want to motivate how to set realistic and impactful goals, right? So you want to give people a dose of reality of what it takes to be successful. And you can't succeed without failure. It's in partnership, right? And so you want to create safety around that thought. You want to personally motivate, help identify what drives your people, ask them what they like about how we move towards goals, what they think could make them more motivated and why, and how that can be tied back to this whole goal achieving process. So here are some design mistakes. And I think, to me, the biggest and most important one is that people don't spend enough time designing goals with the right people involved. Sometimes it's very siloed and then it's handed down. And that's one of the biggest mistakes I've seen in management. So goals that don't align with company objectives. Too many goals are set at the same time for employees. I've had several clients in our business who have, 50, 20, 15 goals. And the reality is that maybe two out of those goals are realistic based on the degree of labor and the interdependency within departments and all these other things that have to be accounted for. So be careful with setting too many goals. Goals lack clarity. To me, when goals lack clarity, managers can't clearly define it in simple terms, and the employees aren't clear on the expectation. So when we go through questions, it's easy to see that they're confused or not clear or can't put it into simple terms. Goals are negative, reducing motivation. Goals are based on feelings rather than data. Goals overlook daily workplace realities. So if there's only so many hours in a day, and achieving a goal is important, but you have to incorporate the day-to-day tasks and how much time those take as well. And whether the goal is a component of those day-to-day tasks or is separate and is going to require a different type of resource allocation. There's no room for mistakes or learning from failures and goals. So if a KPI isn't met or a goal isn't met, there's feeling of failure and there's punishment or something is lost for a department, or there's this negative consequence versus let's learn from it, let's fix it, let's see if there's a design flaw. Goals are established without team input. So the people who are laboring the goals should have a degree of input in goal design and setting. They don't necessarily have to have the last call or decision on it. It could be somebody, with higher level authority and leadership, but there has to be some connection between what actually happens, what they're capable of doing, and what the company needs of them, right? Like those things have to be in sync. And goals like scheduling and cadence support. We have schedules that don't align with the type of achievement that we're requiring of people. The cadence doesn't make sense. And so those are operational issues that should definitely be considered when we're looking at achieving goals. Does it make sense with the amount of time and labor that we have on the table? And goals are visible to the entire team. So I think it's more they're not visible to the entire team. So everybody should understand, what a goal looks like, what it means, and how to achieve it. Right? That's what creates transparency. So goal setting tools to try. So I'm not going to go through all of these one by one, but I did want to share these with you guys because this is the latest and greatest in 2024. These are some of the best goal setting software and tools that are out there right now, and they're doing pretty well. And so if you got registered for the webinar, you'll get a copy of this deck, and you'll be able to look at these. And maybe some of these are ones that you want to check out and use for the right reason. So I will say this, I've seen tools misused often, and tools are designed for a specific purpose. So it is necessary for leaders or managers who are adopting and using tools to really understand what the tool was designed for and whether it's being implemented and being executed in the right way, and confirming whether people are trained correctly on how to use these tools is part of that process. So we have our SMART goals framework, the OKRs, which is objectives and key results, balanced scorecard. You can use tools like Asana, Trello, and Monday.com. And those can help you structure out goals in a way that's very transparent, that's step by step, that can call out milestones, and can really make a difference for you guys. Okay, so we're right at the end, right on time. So these are our key takeaways for today. Managers play a crucial role in setting effective goals. Starting with the SMART goal framework is a solid foundation, but it's just the beginning. Effective goal setting is linked to increased motivation and dopamine activity in the brain. So we definitely have an impact on people, whether it's negative or positive, when we're looking at goal setting and implementing goal setting. Goals are most effective when they are clearly defined and aligned with the organization's mission and vision. We have to understand the bigger picture, and that has to be unanimous, right? We as managers have to ensure that our people really understand the purpose of what we're doing, why it's important, and ultimately why their role matters in that. we need to have a variety of goal management tools that work together for our intended purpose and are a good fit in our environment. Every business is different. There's all sorts of dynamics. And so you really want to get a mix of things that allows you to get to where you're going, but also sits well with your audience and works well with the audience that you have. So we shared a variety of tools. Check them out. You can Google them. You can check them out. A lot of them have free trials if they were software. So play with them a little bit and get your power up. Okay. So last call here. So training and support resources. So we will offer you a copy of the webinar deck if you registered online. We have training programs available that you're free to check out on our website at www.managementcues.org. This here is our hero product, which is our Management Cues Planner that outlines the functions of management and leadership, is accessible to everybody on our website. And then a strategic management collection, all kinds of easy to use tools, which include goal setting type of support that are accessible to you. And this being a Thanksgiving week, we absolutely have a Black Friday sale going on that ends on the 30th. So make sure to not miss out on that. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us on this holiday week. We appreciate you to no end. Keep checking us out and send us any feedback that you might have or would want to share at info@managementcues.org. Happy holidays, and I hope to see you next week.